Hey guys, how's it going? Onage here, and welcome to my first ever tutorial on how to get quick or how to get a good racing driver in Formula 1 2013, the game made by Codemasters. First of all, we are going to start off with the basics. Now I see the basics in this game as braking, turning in and accelerating. So these three aspects will be shown in this video, and I will hope to teach you guys a little bit about them and hopefully get you a good racing driver before you hit the track. We will start off with the braking. Braking is obviously very important in this game as it slows the car down for a certain corner. Take the first corner at Monza. It's a very tricky corner to get right, both in terms of braking and accelerating. You slow down from 7th gear to the 1st gear, and then you want to accelerate as quick as possible without getting too much wheel spin. So let's select Monza then and go out there, and I'll show you how to get around the first corner fast and clean. So let's go then to the first corner at Monza. Here it is. As you can see, this is a chicane. It goes right left. You come down then from 7th gear down to the first one, and as you can see, it's pretty tight. So basically that's why the braking is so important, because you have to get through the corner with very low speed because it's that tight. Then the exit is again very important because there comes a big long straight after this corner, and you want to carry a lot of speed through throughout the whole straight. Let's go and join me in my Ferrari. Here's an example of how to take the corner. Let's have another look at that, shall we? So here's one tip already. As you can see on the left, there are two 150 meter board signs showing the distance between you and the next corner. Take those boards as a marker of where to brake. This isn't just a help of you where to know where to brake, but it also is a great help for you to get consistent in the race. Try to use trees, boards, or anything else that you can use or find a good spot as a braking marker, so you know when you touch that curb or touch that board or you come close to the board, you have to brake. There are different techniques of braking. Some people like to slow the car down completely and then turn in, but I like to brake and then turn in at the same time. But be careful with braking and turning in at the same time. It sometimes is easier to lock up your brakes, and sometimes the brake distance will be longer. So you have to know when to turn in. It's best for a beginner to brake and then turn in instead of doing it at the same time. But you have to do where you feel comfortable with. That's all what it's about. Once you think you have slowed down the car enough, try to turn in. Don't turn in like an idiot, but be a little bit patient. Be slow when turning in. This is best for a beginner. Try to find a good balance between turning in too much and losing too much speed, and turning in a little bit less but getting too much speed into the corner. It's important to have a good balance, and it might take some time. There are two apexes in this chicane, one on the right and one on the left. When you have gone by the first apex, you can press the throttle a little bit into the second apex, but be careful, don't press the throttle too much, otherwise you will end up having wheel spin. Make sure you also find a good balance between positioning yourself too much on the right and too much on the left. After the first apex, you want to get a little bit more to the right, so you can have a good exit out of the second apex. Because when you are too much on the left after the first apex, you have to slow down more for the second apex. So sometimes you have to compromise a corner in order to get a corner after that one better. Take that into consideration when you approach a corner. In the setup of your car, you can change your braking setup. Most of the times it's good to run a little bit less front braking and a little bit more to the rear. That's how I experience it, but I know there are some people who like a more front brake balance. But my driving style is more like turning in the car with a little bit of oversteer on entry. When you put your brakes more to the rear end becomes a little bit more loose on the entry. Putting the brake balance to the front might give you more power on the brakes and slow you down a bit more, but most of the times you cannot turn in at the same time without locking up your wheels. When you put your brake balance too much to the front, your wheels will lock up and you cannot turn in, as you see in this example. Putting your brake balance to the rear will result in more oversteer at the entry, as you see here. I had to correct the car mid-corner, which isn't good, and you lose a lot of time with that. So try to find a good balance. Moving on to Suzuka now. This is a different track where you have to apply different braking techniques in order to slow the car down, especially in the first corner and in turn 11, which is a very tight hairpin. The first corner at Monza was a very hard braking zone. Although that is quite easy to master, Suzuka is quite different, where you have to apply mid-corner braking in some corners. Take the first two corners. I use the 50 meter board as a turn-in point. Then you approach the first corner full throttle and you have to apply braking mid-corner. It's quite tricky to master this. You want to have one very tight line for the first corner without actually hitting the curves, because that's going to unsettle the car. Here's a picture of when I brake, or a picture just before I brake actually. As you can see, I'm still in the corner, I'm still turning in. It's quite difficult to brake then. Don't press the brakes completely, but slowly get on the brakes. Once you think you're putting too much pressure on the brakes, release them a little bit so you won't lock up your wheels. It's very important when you slow down more and more, you have to come off the brakes a little bit in order to not lock them up. Try to get the car as straight as possible when braking without actually, running off the track. It's very important to keep the car as straight as possible on the braking. In that way the braking distance will be shorter, and also the car will be much more stable at the corner entry. In this case I actually braked too late, causing me to get too much speed into the first corner. As you can see, I'm still braking while turning in. This is basically my driving style, but it's only possible where you have a little bit more brake balance to the rear. I was too far off the apex in the second turn, causing me to run wide right now in this corner. This is usually not good. You want to have a very tight line. Let's watch that in slow motion. As you can see here, is the 50 meter braking point, or the 50 meter board. There we go. Turning in then, and still on the throttle. DRS was actually wide open for this first corner. And right now comes a very critical point. As you can see here, I'm doing my steering wheel a little bit more straight, and at that point I braked a little bit more. That allowed me to slow down a bit more. Right now I'm still then on the brakes and hit the apex a little bit late for the second turn, because that will allow you to have a better exit. Here comes the hairpin, very difficult. You first have a very slight right hander before you come and brake for the first corner. As you can see here, I completely messed up my braking. Let's analyze that. Here I am actually approaching the first corner. You can see on the right hand side there's a little bit of a pole standing there. I don't know what it is actually, but I use that as a braking point. Once I basically touch that, or it is out of my screen, I start braking. In this case I started to brake too late and too much. When you brake too much, you can see the brakes will lock up and there's no way you will slow down. Here's how to take the first, or how to take the corner. You brake, but start braking slow, brake a little bit more, and then get off the brakes again. This all happens in a fraction of a second, but it's very important to start braking slowly. Don't press the brakes like in 1 second, bam, slam on the brakes. That's not how you do it. Get slowly on the brakes, reach the top, and then get slowly off the brakes again, so release them. Here's one more example of braking. We are coming up to spoon here. As you can see, I'm using again a 100 meter board as my braking point, so I'm shifting down then and turning in. Another very good tip is to look in front of you as much as you can. So do not look closely. So let's say you're approaching a corner. When you approach the corner, you want to look into the corner. But when you're in the corner, you don't want to look in it anymore. You want to look and focus on the next corner. So try to look as much ahead as possible of you. That usually is the best, and will also give you a good idea of where you are and how to take the next corner. Moving on to accelerating. Having a good traction out of every single corner is very important. There's not much you can do wrong, luckily, other than pressing the throttle too much. Getting too much and too early on the throttle will cause a wheel spin. Wheel spin is noticed by the sound of the rear wheels spinning and also the engine revs going up a bit more. See the performance of the rear tires as a graphic. In this graphic there is one point where your tires will give maximum grip at the amount of throttle you give. But when you press too much throttle, there is a drop off in the graphic showing that the tires will give not as much grip as they would with pressing a little bit less throttle. For an example, when you press 80% throttle, the pretty much is the maximum of or the max in terms of tire grip. When you go above that 80% throttle, let's say 90% throttle, there's a drop off in the graphic, and that will cause in wheel spin. There's a high chance of wheel spin when you get at the exit of a slow corner. Make sure you get slowly on the throttle and maybe use your just short shifting technique in order to have the best traction. Short shifting is going up a gear higher when you're accelerating, and it helps quite a bit with reducing the wheel spin. Next subject or aspect is turning in. Now turning in, you can basically see this as well as knowledge of the racing line. The racing line is a line that goes through the corners, which you have to keep in your mind when you approach a corner. There is a certain line through every single corner, which is the fastest line. When you have two or more corners following up each other, it's better to sacrifice one corner to open up the second one a bit more, as you can see in this picture. Now I know this all seems pretty basic, but it's actually a thing that most drivers forget during the race, is positioning themselves better for the next corner. So don't think too easy about this, because it's actually pretty difficult. In this case we have a picture of a double hairpin. The first hairpin seems pretty basic. You brake, you turn in and accelerate. But there's a point in this acceleration. Normally it's better to go wide, hit the apex, go wide again. But in this case you accelerate and then move on the right side again in order to open up the second hairpin a bit better. Because when you would stay on the left hand side after the first hairpin, your speed into the second hairpin will be much worse, because you have to turn in a tighter line. I'm taking again Suzuka as an example. This is actually a very good example. Have a look at the first couple of corners in the first sector. They are called the S's. You have to sacrifice a lot of corners to open up the better one, to open up the next one a bit better. You can gain a lot of time by doing this, and I'll show you that now. That went quite good, but it also can go wrong, as you see here. If you mess up one line through one corner, it will mess up pretty much the rest of the corners, as you see here. I'm going too wide here already, and let's have a look at that in slow motion. So here we go then. This was actually quite good, and now in this corner I was a bit too far off the apex. You want to touch the curb, and I took too much speed, which I run wide, and then I compromised this corner and got wide again. It's here, this point. I am too far off the apex here, which causes me to run a bit wide, and you want to be on the left hand side a little bit more for this right hander, but I was too far on the right hand side and I got a bad line for it. Have a look at this. As you can see, I'm compromising or sacrificing a lot of corners in order to open up the second one. You can see me moving a little bit to the right there, so I can open up this corner a bit more. You can see me moving to the left to open up this one a bit more. And usually I'm a bit far off the apex here, but that's just my driving style. And then going to the right again to open up this one. This should be full throttle up the hill. So practice that first sector. It's very important. Get a good line through there, and you should be fine. Also, Silverstone has a few corners which are very important in terms of racing line. Have a look at Brooklands, Lovefield, Maggots, Baggots and Chapel. They're very important in terms of racing line, and I'll be showing you the wrong racing lines through them and the right ones. Starting off with the wrong one. As you can see here, I'm too far off the first apex and too far off the second apex as well. Brooklands and Lovefield are two fantastic corners. As you can see here, I was quite good in terms of racing line at this stage, because you want to completely miss the first apex. You want to touch the second one as much as you can, and you want to really go for that one. That is the apex I'm talking about. You want to ignore the first one, but definitely hit that one, because that will be very crucial for the next corner, Lovefield. You will see me hitting the second apex a bit better, this apex, and then you want to go a little bit more to the left, more than I did, to open up this corner, Lovefield. And there are a few different lines actually possible through that corner. So here we go, pretty much ignoring the first apex, and then tied it up a little bit more, hitting that curb. You should hit it a bit more than I did. And in this corner you want to hit the apex, go a little bit wide mid corner, and then get back on the apex again. So you basically hit the apex 2 times, turning in, going a bit wide mid corner, and then turning in again to hit the second apex. more than I did actually. Moving on to maggots, baggets and chapel now. Here's maggots and baggets, and as you can see I am here too far off the apex there, which is compromising my line throughout the rest of the corners, and you definitely don't want that to be happening. We'll have a look at it here. So here we are approaching it. I'm too far here, and I'm too far then on the left hand side in order to get it right hand or the left hander in order to get it left hander right. Here's how we should do it. Take a nice line throughout every corner, and then obviously go a little bit to the left in order to open up that right hander a bit more. So you basically want to think while you're driving about the lines you're taking, which lines should be good. Here another example. Hitting it and hitting the apex of the curbs, I should say, is quite important there. And you can use curbs at the exit. There's no traction problems whatsoever at high speed. Another look here in the T-cam. Pretty sweet going through those corners. So I'll tell you what is a little bit of a sacrifice. So this is sacrificing a little bit because you want to get to the right hand side in order to open up this left hander, and this left hander, this is sacrificing, guys, going to the left hand a little bit more, left hand side, and then turning in through that final corner, that final right hander, and having a better line through there. So that's basically it for this first tutorial. I know everything was pretty basic, but still I hope you guys have learned something from it. Especially the racing line is very important to get right. You know, when you think you're going fast and you cannot really go any faster, try to actually take different lines. Think about the lines, analyze the track, which is quite important. You know, have a track map or something like that, a track layout, and you know, just analyze the lines you should be taking. And keep in mind the sacrificing for the next corner is quite important. So when you have a right hander, you want to go to the left hand side, turn in, and at the exit go to the left hand side again, unless there's a corner following it up, obviously. Try to cut the corners as much as possible without, you know, losing or getting off the track. With the two wheels you should stay within the white lines, because that are the rules. So I hope you guys have learned something. I do want to continue making these if it gets a good response, but making the next tutorial, I think it won't be it will take some time before that the next one comes out then. But I'll see if the response is good. If it has a good response, I'll continue making them. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have learned something. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comment section and I will be answering them. So I hope you guys have learned something. Again, thanks for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a like, and see you next time. Goodbye.